bloopers.
Hold on, I'll go get the sign.
Do the COVID.
No. Like, how do you think Hudson felt?
I know, like girl.
No.
How do you think?
Talk about living in mom's basement.
Right?
It is time to get this party
Started! Woo!
I'm not cleaning this up. I can't help it. Said maybe the malarial drug's gonna be the one that saves me. 'Cause after all, we're all infected. Paul. Especially Paul. Farmer Paul, you've got this. We only have one camera, you don't need to do that.
It's true. You are both unkind. Hey everybody, my name is Jen and I am so thrilled that you are joining us today for worship at Ashley Ridge Church online. Coincidentally, this is also our first weekend back inside the auditorium and all of our environments at the high school. And so if you're in the community in the weeks to come, we would love to have you out there with us at 10 a.m., but we will also continue to be worshiping in this space. Speaking of which, I'm starting a new series today based on the book, the classic book by Eugene Peterson, A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. I really am so very excited about the conversation we're going to have about faith and being travelers and not simply tourists. But y'all, it is a journey we're on together. I love that we get to do life together in these ways. I also want to continue to say thank you. We are coming through a long season of doing things in different kinds of ways, heading back into things that feel more normal, and yet also moving forward into new seasons, new opportunities, and new environments, including our building process. We have a family meeting coming up in the next few weeks, and in the meantime, do want to encourage you to continue to give to Ashley Ridge. When you give, we get to make environments happen where people encounter God. And that's what it's all about. We need God. That's why we're here this morning. We're ready to worship with you.
Satan fall like lightning. I saw darkness run for cover, but the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. I believe in signs and wonders. I have resurrection power. Yes, I do. Still the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. Oh, my praise belongs to you forever. This is my testimony from death to life, 'cause grace rewrote my story. I'll testify by Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Hey. Come together, sons and daughters, bought with blood and washed in water. Sing the praises of the Spirit, Son and Father. Our God will finish what he started. Oh, our God will finish what he started. Oh, this is my testimony from death to life, 'cause grace rewrote my story. grace rewrote my story. I'll testify by Jesus Christ the righteous. I'm justified. This is my testimony. Oh, I'm alive. This is my testimony. From death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story. I'll testify by Jesus Christ the righteous. I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Hey, from death to life for all my life. Hey.
I think I speak for all of us when I say we are ready to get back to life. There are things that have been on hold and shut down for a year plus at this point, and we are in some ways already in it and also still on the cusp of getting back to so many more of the pieces of life that have been on hold. For this weekend, for us here at Ashley Ridge Church, we've been meeting every week since September, but we're back inside in the auditorium for worship, and we have all of our different environments open. We're so excited to be back in those spaces. But I know I've talked to a lot of y'all as well, and we're eager to get back to things like large events, like a concert. I remember before all of this started, the last concert that I went to was a Need to Breathe concert, and I told my children when we came home that night that the next time they came to Charleston, we would take them to the Need to Breathe concert. And of course, everything's been delayed, and they're so eager for their first concert experience, and I can't wait to get back out there. We're eager for some of the large events. Even the introverts have said, enough, we want to go hang out and see all the people, just maybe not talk to them. The other thing that I know everyone is ready for is getting back to vacations. If spring break taught us anything, it's that we are a people determined to go somewhere, anywhere. Even if it's just to grandmother's house we go. I knew very few people over spring break that didn't find a way to go somewhere, simply because we could. The experts, or at least the travel industry, are telling us that one of the things we're going to experience this summer is epic travel numbers in every direction. Things are already booked up. It's hard to get a spot. So if you don't have a beach house already, don't try. Just come visit some of us that are down here in the Charleston area. But things are booked. This is going to be the summer where people say yes to everything. Some of what I know we're experiencing, though, too, is we've already started to do that, and we're feeling ourselves quickly return to some of those whirlwind paces that we said last year we wouldn't go back to. We're all over the place so many times. But the reason I want to talk about this is I do want to talk for a little bit this morning about the difference between tourists and travelers. As we get ready to get back out there and do all of the things, I want to talk about what the difference is between tourists and travelers. Now, when it comes to vacation, I encourage both. I love history. I know a lot of y'all do. So being a tourist, being someone who goes and sees these places that just get marked off as something really important happened here is so, so cool. But I think you probably kind of know what I mean by this difference between being a tourist and being a traveler. But really quickly, just to delineate, tourists want to see things and travelers want to experience things. So a tourist is someone who is going to go to that place where something maybe happened a long time ago just to put their eyes on it. A tourist can go to a battlefield or to Niagara Falls or to the Grand Canyon. We see these things. But a traveler takes that next step toward wanting to experience. one of the adventures that had been on my dad's bucket list was going to the Rose Bowl parade, because I don't know if you know this, but every year at the Rose Bowl parade, because all of the floats are built with all these fresh flowers, they can't do it until right before. These aren't things that they can finish building months in advance. So they have the structural pieces done, but then you can go and be a day of on-site volunteer to put together all of these incredible flowers onto these floats. And so when I think about the difference between this idea of going to see something and going to experience something, the difference between tourists and travelers. Tourists arrive at a destination, and travelers are often passing through, right? Tourists go to a landing spot. But when we're travelers, these are usually the adventures we take where we're going lots of places, and everywhere we go is on the way to something else. For some of you that have traveled across these great United States of ours, you've probably ended up in some places that would have never made your tourist destination list. Things like Wall Drug in South Dakota. Some of you know what I'm talking about. Some of you have been to Cranberry World in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Some of you have been to the Corn Palace in Iowa. These are not places that you necessarily list, but as you're on the way and on the road, for us in South Carolina, we laugh at all the people who stop at south of the border as they head into our state coming from places north. And these are just humorous places that we pass as we're traveling through on our way to somewhere else. Here's another one for you, just so we can mark these differences. Tourists check landmarks off a list. Travelers leave breadcrumbs and build networks. Have you heard or read any of these great stories of people who they just get in their car and they go for months? And they're on this journey, and they visit different people and they experience different things. And these are the great travel journals that you've perhaps read, and some of you may have experienced. Whereas as tourists, more often than not, we're going to check landmarks off a list, and we're going to hit one thing at a time. And this idea that I love here about traveling, and this idea of not just being on more of a journey, but building these networks, is so many times these travel journeys are built around people, even more so than the places. One of the books I've read recently is a book called Between Two Kingdoms, and it's a memoir about a girl who went through a very serious cancer diagnosis and lost several years in her 20s to that journey and things that she experienced, the way her life was so wrapped up and changed by that. And then as she transitioned back into what she called the Kingdom of the Well, she took this really cool journey where she traveled all over the United States in a car. First, she had to get her driver's license. She was a New Yorker, and so she had never even driven before. So she learned to drive, borrowed a friend's car, and she went on this journey. And her destinations were different people who had reached out to her and connected with her while she was in the midst of this cancer journey. One of the people that she went and saw was an inmate on death row who identified with parts of her story of being trapped and waiting as she was waiting for her bone marrow transplant. And again, these are just fascinating kinds of connections. But as she was traveling, she was building this network that was marked by people who had intersected that journey in different ways. So again, here's the thing. When you're planning your summer vacations, that's not what we're doing here this morning. Call your travel agent. But I encourage both being a tourist and a traveler at different points. But when it comes to the life of faith, an area where I would be so privileged to continue to be your guide, when it comes to a life of faith, or to say it another way, discipleship, this word we talk about, it's just this life of faith. This is something that is meant for travelers and not for tourists. See, too many times we want faith to be a point that we arrive at, something that we can grab hold of and take a picture beside and know that we've arrived. And we get frustrated when we either feel like we can't find it or we can't grab a hold of it or we can't capture it in the way that we'd like to capture it, even with all the right filters. And so we can walk away if we approach it from the standpoint of tourism. But God, from the very beginning, invited us on a journey, invited us to be travelers in this life of faith. You see, travelers are people who spend their lives going somewhere. And this isn't just about those moments when we abandon our lives, so to speak, to go on vacation. This idea of traveling through life is about having this mindset that says we're always going somewhere. Our life is about something. And as life travelers, we are going somewhere. And here's where I want to make the connection for you. Disciples, followers of Jesus, people who are interested in this life of faith are actually just a very specific kind of traveler. Some of you, this is going to help you. This is going to help you. Maybe you've toyed around with this idea before. You've visited, you've popped in. You're trying to decide if faith is something you're interested in and Jesus is somebody you might want to know more about. But maybe you've been invited in before as a tourist. And here's the thing that I want to help you with. This life of faith, this idea of being a disciple is really simply about being a specific kind of traveler. Disciples are people who spend their lives going to God, and their way there is Jesus. We are people who are living our lives going to God, and our way there is Jesus. Jesus who keeps meeting us at these different spots in our life. Jesus who's the one who came quite literally so that we could hold him and see him and touch him as he invited us to walk with him in this journey to the Father. And so this journey of faith is really something that begins when we turn from one direction and we start to go another way. And so these next couple weeks, I want to use this book that is one of my all-time favorites. And you don't have to read it, but I would love for you to read it. And I think it's one of the best books you could invest some time in. But 41 years ago, Eugene Peterson, who's a pastor and a faith leader for his whole adult life, wrote so many different books, led so many different people in their faith journey. But 41 years ago, he wrote a book called A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. And then 21 years ago, he wrote an updated edition. He was asked to pick this book up that had become an essential book for so many people and update it and add some different things. And the interesting thing is that he said when he picked it up and he started to do it, there was actually almost nothing he ended up changing, because he said it turns out this travel book, this guidebook, it hadn't shifted. This idea of a long obedience in the same direction still held. And in fact, the subtitle of the book is Discipleship in an Instant Society. And he said, some things simply haven't changed. But what he does in the book and what we're going to kind of pull from these next few weeks is he walks through the Songs of Ascent, which is just a name given to Psalms 120 through 134. There's 14 Psalms that are part of this songbook of the Bible. And they're these songs that people would sing as they went on their pilgrimages to the temple. Most people, when they were traveling to Jerusalem, this is back in Old Testament times, they were going up. Jerusalem was more elevated than most of the desert land around it. And so a couple times a year for these different festivals, people would travel. And these were the songs that they would sing as they worked their way up to Jerusalem. And so Peterson talks his way through these psalms, through these songs that these travelers would sing to talk about this idea of how this life of faith becomes this turning from one way and going a different way. And so it all starts in Psalm 120. And I invite you, if you've got your Bible or app, any of that up near you, and it's going to be right here on the screen with me. But Psalm 120 is this song that's not going to feel like a song that you sing. It's actually a kind of angsty song. So maybe it was written by Generation X, but you know, we were real angsty when I was coming up in the 90s. These are the songs that we wrote. And so Psalm 120 really feels a lot like that. And what we get in this moment is this beginning of this journey where someone even decides to go on the journey because they're fed up with where they were. This is something to do when you've decided you are tired of the way things are. You are done with dealing with the world as it is and going in the direction that your life has been heading, and you're fed up to the point that you're ready to go somewhere else. This song is a song of someone who is fed up. They're done with a world of lies and hate. Am I talking to any of you? They are broken and they are frustrated with the pain of a world, and they're just crying out for something else. They're ready to move. They're ready for something different. They're ready to travel. Are you ready? Here's the song. Starts out, I'm in trouble, and I cry to God, desperate for an answer. Deliver me from the liars, God. They smile so sweetly, but lie through their teeth. I love this. This starts out, this travel, this journey, this God, you got to get me out of here, this turning. And he says, deliver me from the lies. And the truth is, we live in a world that is full of lies. But here's the problem, is that they are so carefully masked and presented as the truth. I'm talking about the kinds of lies, not the ones that your kids tell you when you ask if they brush their teeth. Like, I'm talking about the lies that are bathed in factual accuracy, but they still miss the point. And I want to read to you how Eugene Peterson describes these lies. He says this: rescue me from the lies of advertisers who claim to know what I need and what I desire. From the lies of entertainers who promise a cheap way to joy. From the lies of politicians who pretend to instruct me in power and morality. From the lies of psychologists who offer to shape my behavior and my morals so that I will live long, happily, and successfully. From the lies of religionists who heal the wounds of this people lightly. From the lies of moralists who pretend to promote me to the office of captain of my own fate. This one hurts a little. From the lies of pastors who get rid of God's command so you won't be inconvenienced in following the religious fashions. Rescue me from the person who tells me of life and omits Christ, who is wise in the ways of the world and ignores the movement of the Spirit. Oh, sit with that. Sit with that. That one's in the app notes. You just need to go back and look at that a little bit. What are the lies that we hold on to because we want something to make sense of our lives? But when we finally get to this point where we go, I need to be rescued from every pretense and idea that we can figure this life out for ourselves. At what point do we just get so tired of trying all of the different things that we say, I need something that's not just another self-help suggestion of how if I just do this or try this or get better at this and do more of this, then I can have what puts me in the driver's seat of my life. We all know what it is to be on that hamster wheel. But what happens when we get so fed up that we say, God, deliver me, rescue me, put me on a different path. At Ashley Ridge Church, the number one core value that we hold to is that we need God. We need God. That this world does not hold what we need, that we can't work harder or smarter and find or have or get it to a point where it all makes sense. In fact, we simply need God. Be a little honest with y'all here in this moment, and this is harder for me, but one of the things that I've done recently is started to talk to a counselor. And something I've recommended for a lot of you for a really long time. And came time that I should take some of my own advice. And for a lot of us, walking through what has been a very difficult year, and then for me, very much compounded by the loss of my dad and just so many of the things going on around me. And so I've been talking to this counselor. She's fantastic, and she's just given me some space to share a lot of the things. But one of the things that I love so much that she's already kind of helped me get is that I think I thought, you with me here? I think I thought that when people talk about processing things and working through things, that it was just like all of these other things that I love to learn and read about. It was this thing I could do and then master. That I could just acquire this as a new skill, and that this whole idea of processing things was going to be about me figuring things out so that they made sense, so that I could handle it, so that I could understand it, and therefore be okay with it. Y'all you can only imagine how much my counselor loves me. And she's just like, look, Jen, you're not going to figure anything out. In fact, you're not even here to figure stuff out. She says processing is really just getting things out of your head. Just taking all the stuff that's swirling around and finding a way to get it out there. Not so that you can make sense of it and control it and file it and identify it and label it. That would be easier, right? Because you're just trying to get it out there. And here's the thing, and I'm telling you this because this is my story, but I think this is your story too. It's just the specifics maybe a little bit differently. Maybe a little bit different. Because the thing is, there is not a point at which my dad's death makes sense and is therefore okay. There's not. I've made more marriage counseling recommendations in this last year than I have in a long time. And here's something that I want to tell y'all. I think it's good, and I think we need to process. It's about getting things out. But there is not a magical, mythical marriage land where suddenly two fallen, imperfect people figure it out and have the perfect marriage. It's not out there. It's not something other people have that you're missing. It's about learning to be two imperfect travelers journeying somewhere together, because two are so many times better than one. That goes with your friendships and so many of these relationships we have. The reason we take the time to talk about it is because it's worth it to be on a journey together, not because we're going to figure it all out. Does this help? This helps me, right? I hope this helps you too. This idea of faith is not this thing that we're on a mission to figure out. Instead, it's this journey that we're on where Jesus comes just so close. And the more we travel with him on this journey toward God, man, we just get to know him more. And sometimes things make more sense than they did before. But if nothing else, we're just not alone. We are with the one who loves us and knows us best. And so here's the writer of this song, and he says, God, I'm done. Rescue me from this mess. Rescue me from this journey and this direction and this endless pursuit that I keep finding myself on. And redirect me on a journey toward you, where I don't have to know it all, because you are the all that I need. He keeps going. Do you know what's next? Can you see what's coming, all you barefaced liars? You can tell he's mad, right? He is worked up. He says, pointed arrows and burning coals will be your reward. And so again, this is just this idea of you've got to be so fed up with where you are that you're ready to turn and go a different way. Peterson says it this way: we have to get fed up with the ways of the world to desire the world of grace. Right? We're not ready to fully pursue this life of faith until we're done with this other life. And then the psalmist says, I'm doomed to live in Meshach. You are too, right? I'll tell you about it in a minute. I'm doomed to live in Meshach, cursed with a home in Kedar, my whole life lived camping. Sentence actually goes on, but for some of you, let's just stop there. Like, I'm done camping. I'm done with the bugs and the heat. I'm done with the potential for rain. Okay, he actually goes on. He says, I'm done with my whole life lived camping among quarreling neighbors. I'm all for peace, but the minute I tell them so, they go to war. All right, let me give you a little context here. So Meshach is this far off tribe. So the first person that would have been writing this in Israel, in this land of Palestine, is talking about Meshach as this far off tribe that would have been thousands of miles from Palestine in what today we would identify as southern Russia. And so really by saying Meshach, what they were identifying was this just way far away, this unknown entity out there. And then when they said Kedar, so there's Meshach that was just far away and unusual and so far beyond their realm because they couldn't travel there on vacation. That was too far in their day and in their time. And then there was Kedar, which was this wandering tribe that had a reputation for being hostile, that moved all along Israel's borders. So in other words, what they were saying is these places and these peoples that represented the unknown and the strange and the hostile, they're saying, I don't want to be stuck here. In other words, this world is not my home and I want out. I don't want to live my whole life trying to define myself by these borders that feel unknown and strange and hostile. And so again, here's this invitation to turn, an invitation to travel in a different way, an invitation to walk not toward a place, but toward God. The start of a life of faith, it's turning. It's not an emotion. Sometimes it can be emotional, but it's not an emotion, it's a decision. It's a decision to move away from a life that is about us to a life that's about God. Some of you may have been with us at our Easter service on Saturday. We were outside at Ashley Ridge High School, and that night I talked about Easter as an invitation to wonder, W-O-N-D-E-R, this idea of God really wants us to bring all of our I wonder to the idea of faith. And the crazy thing is, when we do, Jesus just always shows up right in the middle of that. And that's how the story of Resurrection Day played out as Luke described it. And so there's this invitation to be people who say, man, I wonder about this. Not because I think I'm going to figure it all out, but I wonder how this works. And I wonder why it is this way. And I think what I'm trying to add right at this point for us as we have this conversation about what it is to be disciples, what it is to live a life of faith and be these kinds of specific travelers, is that God is inviting us to be people who wonder as we wander. People who wonder and are filled with this idea of expectation that life has meaning. And that meaning and that life is the most fully experienced as we wander in the direction of God. With an expectation that we're not there yet, but some point we will be. Let me say it differently. Faith isn't something we grasp. It's something we practice. Faith isn't something that we grasp and hold on to. It's something we practice again and again and again. Here's the last thing I want to read to you directly from Eugene Peterson. He says it this way. He says, there's a great market for religious experience in our world. There is little enthusiasm for the patient acquisition of virtue. Little inclination to sign up for a long apprenticeship in what earlier generations of Christians called holiness. Religion in our time has been captured by the tourist mindset. Religion is understood as a visit to an attractive site to be made when we have adequate leisure. There's a difference, right? What if instead, life of faith is a commitment to travel, to turn from one way and then turn again when we find ourselves drifting back, to walk in the slow, consistent direction of God. I found out early this morning that one of the biggest people in my journey of faith passed away. She had been struggling with cancer, and last night her struggle with cancer is over, and that part of her journey is done. And far too soon, like a lot of these things. She was same age as my parents. I grew up with her kids, and she was just an amazing human being. But as I got that news this morning, what I thought about was what a picture her life painted of someone who simply walked a consistent life of faith in the direction of God. She was the person who signed up to be the in-school suspension monitor at the high school, just to come along some of the people who maybe needed her smile the most on any given day. She walked this life in this consistent direction toward God. And there were so many of us that watched it, and we wanted it too. And it allowed us to start our own journey of walking in that direction toward God, walking in a direction that knew we weren't always going to have the answers, that sometimes hope was going to be harder to grasp than other times. But if we kept walking toward God, if we kept walking with the expectation that Jesus was near, that we would have what we needed along the way. And so here's what I love, and here's a final piece of imagery for you. But there is a difference between tourists and travelers in the same way that there's a difference between monuments and footprints. And at some point, we have to decide that in our life, are we living in the trajectory of wanting a monument put up to remember that we were here, or in a way that we want to leave footprints of where we went? And here's how William Faulkner described the difference. He said, a monument only says, at least I got this far, while a footprint says, this is where I was when I moved again. We're constantly being invited forward, onward. And there's going to be plenty of moments where we find ourselves drifting back. And too many times it is going to take the fed up and the angst and the frustration that makes us turn again toward God. But isn't it such good news that God is so patient? That God's way is a way of grace. And every time we turn in that direction, God welcomes us back on that journey and says, keep walking, keep going. There is joy. And sometimes pain, sometimes hurdles, and sometimes smooth paths. But you are on this path of life and faith, and you know it when your companion is Jesus. So here's what I know about us. We're ready to get out. We are ready to travel again for the love of all goodness. And church, I'm looking for travelers. I'm looking for travelers who want to walk together toward God. Fed up with life as it is and has been, and are ready to walk together and invite as many people as possible to join us as we walk in the direction of God. That way is Jesus, and it's why we're going to keep showing up. We're going to keep singing about him. We're going to keep calling out lies together. We're going to keep practicing what it is to hear God's voice and obey him over all the other voices competing for our attention. And so here's what I want to ask you to do this week is I want you to pay attention to the frustration. I want you to pay attention to your anger. I want you to pay attention to your grief. And I want you to even pay attention to that part of you that is ready to get out. And let it be an invitation to turn and walk toward him. And if we can do it together, it's going to be a good time. Let's pray. God, we want to be travelers and not tourists on a life of faith. God, we want to be people who don't stop at just checking something out and getting excited in the moment, but who have an expectation that every day of our lives we're on our way to somewhere. And so God, give us a taste for that adventure. Give us the inclination to make that turn, and help us to embrace that journey, to not get caught up in what we have figured out and not figured out, but instead to be so eager to wonder as we wander with you. So God, thank you for giving us that invitation, and thank you for sending us Jesus so that we wouldn't have to be alone, so that we could have that person to hold on to walk with, to look toward as we're on this road. God, help us to be people who are in a journey of long obedience in the same direction. And we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Before he spoke creation.